Alright, hey guys, Jamie here, and today we are back in Unreal Engine working on some game tool stuff. In this video I'm working with a level designer that's building out this level, and he needed some working doors, blueprint for doors to open and close, and some of the things he mentioned that he wanted was to be able to swing the door open from either side. And also the door closes behind the player when he goes through. All right, so I've got this is the spot I'm going to stick a door, and I made a quick door mesh just temporarily so I could see what was going on. So let's get started. Okay, so first thing you're going to do, make a blueprint class, and it's going to be an actor because it's going to be in the level. Okay, and I'm going to call this BP door. We can open this up. So the first thing we need really is our door mesh, right? So we can add a component. We're going to add a static mesh. We'll call it door. And then what I'd like to do is eventually make it so that this is a variable, so that you can drop these doors in anywhere and be able to change the door mesh. So then the first thing I'm going to do is in the construction script, okay, I'm going to take this door, I'm going to set static mesh, okay, I'm going to wire that in so when the door is created, it'll take whatever's here. Now I'm going to drag off of this wire and I'm going to promote to variable. And I'll call this door mesh. Then you click the little eye, and now that's visible to the level designer. Right, so this is kind of like, it's not necessary because I think most people could probably drop into the blueprint and just change whatever mesh is on here, but I just think it's a nice little touch to be able to give this the option. The easier you make things, the better it's going to be for everybody. Now in this door mesh, I will go ahead and set the temp door mesh ahead of time. Okay. You can also do the same thing with the material. So we can drag off the door. We can say set material. And kind of do the same thing. Drag off this, promote to variable, door material. Check the eye. Okay. And then in this one, I'm going to, after you compile, you'll be able to set this to the temp material that I made. All right. So now if I drag this out into the level, BP door, go ahead and set it right here. You can see it's in the wrong orientation, which is fine. We can just turn this, doesn't really matter. Because the way we're going to make this, it's not going to matter really which way this is oriented. So we should be able to drop this anywhere, and it's going to open 90 degrees this way, negative 90 this way. And so wherever you stick it, it's a relative rotation, and so it should work. All right, so let's go ahead and just play, just for the heck of it. Okay, so make sure our collisions are set. All right, so now our door is blocking us, and that's what we want. And also, if we look at over here, now I have variables quickly and easy. I don't have to drive into the blueprint to set these. I can change the door material of the mesh, and so that's just a nice thing to do. All right, so in the event graph, actually we can get rid of all these because we're not using them. The first thing I need are two. Well, we'll just do one for now, but I need a box collision here in front of the door. So we're going to add a component. We're going to say box collision, okay, and then we're going to move this out right in front of the door, and I'm pretty sure it's below the door too. We don't necessarily need that, so we can raise it up. It doesn't really matter if it's off of the ground or not, because your character's going to fill that space. So you're going to move this away depending on where you want them to trigger the door. Okay, so if you're up here, they're going to have to walk right up to the door. If they're over here, they can be a meter away and still open the door. All right, so now on the box collision, you can right click on it and say add event, and you're going to do the add on component begin overlap. And so that's when a player will overlap it. And actually that brings up a good point. This box collision right now, its collision is set to, let's see, overlap all dynamic. Okay, so that would be if you eventually had particles of something that broke apart that was actually ended up being a dynamic object, then it would open the door, and we don't really want that. So we're going to change this to overlap only pawn. Okay, so now only when a pawn character overlaps this door will it actually fire this event. Okay, so we can compile that. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we just want to get the door moving, right? So let's take the door. We're going to drag off of here, and we're going to go ahead and say set relative, can't spell, relative rotation. Okay, and I like to right click on these dots and split them, so that way I get right to the one that I need. We can go ahead and wire this. Let's just go ahead and set this to, I think it's 90. Okay, so we'll compile that and play. And now when we run over to the door, it should just pop right open. Okay, so it popped open the wrong way. So now we know that this is negative 90. All right, so and I already know all of this, and I'm just kind of working you guys through what I go through when I'm making a new blueprint or making something new from scratch. I go through all of this. It's like, okay, I have to figure out, okay, what's my number that I need in there? What do I need to put next? How am I going to do this? And so I'm just kind of walking you guys through my process of figuring all this out. All right, so let's just make sure this works. And boom, door's open. Now, obviously, if I continue to run through here, it's not going to do anything because it's setting the relative rotation. Okay, so what that means is it's turning that door and it turned it 90 degrees. It's not adding rotation every time, right? And to prove that you're hitting that box, you can drag off of here and you can say print string, and you can say box hit. Okay, and this is just kind of like a little debugging method to make sure that you're hitting the box every time. So you can see here up in the corner it said box hit, box hit, box hit, box hit. So every time I hit the box, it's setting that relative rotation on the door to negative 90 degrees, which is exactly what we want. But I want it to open smoothly, okay? And so to open smoothly, what we need is a timeline. Okay, so we add a timeline. We can say door motion. You can call it whatever you want, really. Okay. Now inside the timeline, timelines confuse some people sometimes because they just don't know exactly what to do. But they're not really that complicated. The timeline is going to give you, when you double click onto it, it's going to give you the option to add a float track, a vector track, event track, color track. Okay, and so what we want is a float track because we're working with numbers. Okay, now 5 seconds is a long time. I don't want my door to take 5 seconds to open. I probably want it to take 2 seconds to open. So I'm going to change this to 2. Okay, this track we'll call, I'll just right click and rename door. We'll just keep it the same, door motion. So now this is like your timeline. This is your 2-second timeline. In the beginning, we're going to add a keyframe, Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and change these to 0 and 0. Make sure they're 0, because I don't want my door to be moving at all at 0. And then at 2, we're going to add a key. And now we're just going to go up here and set them to 2 seconds. I want my value to be -90. Okay. Now you can see that the little line right here is going way, way down. So you want to hit this little zoom to fit. Okay. You can mouse wheel out too if you want to. Now this is, oh, I don't want to do that. That's 2. So now these are a super straight line. If you want this to be curved a little bit, like soft open, soft close, you can highlight both of them, right click, and choose this auto. And that will be a nice little curve. You can change these little handles to make it sharper curve open, but a slower close, or you don't want to do that because that's going to open your way a little bit. Okay, so let's do that here. So we have a softer finishing. Okay, and that's just this is purely aesthetics. Let's go ahead and compile. Oops, compile, and go back to the event graph. Now, when we hit the box, we want to play this timeline. On the update of this timeline, we want to change the relative rotation of the door. And now instead of -90, we want to take this. Okay, so now as this plays through 2 seconds, it's going to spit out, and that kind of, I'm not sure exactly how often this updates, but it's gonna put out the number of, from here, this number, it's going to spit out that pin. Okay, and I'm going to plug that right in there. Okay, so now what this should do is when I run over the box, it should now slowly open the door. Let's compile that. Also, just in case you guys didn't know, I kind of like to have this option here where you hit this little arrow and it says save on compile, and I put it on success. So if I compile and it successfully compiles, it'll automatically save. Okay, so that's why you're not seeing me hit the save button. You should always use the save button, but I've got it set on the save on compile. All right, so let's play. Let's make sure that our motion is right. All right, good. So there it goes. So now it slowly opens, which is kind of what we want. Now, if you wanted to adjust the speed of that, you could just kind of drive in here, and you could move this to 1.5. You could change the entire length to 1.5. So you could make that faster or slower, however you wanted to do. We're going to leave it right there for now. All right. Okay, so that's a quick door open. If you wanted to leave the door open at that point, you could be done here. But one of the requests was that the door closes behind the player. Okay. So the way we're going to do that is on the finished event of the timer. Okay. We're going to go down here and we're going to add a delay. Okay, I want to delay about 1 second. Okay, and then I'm just going to wire this to the reverse from end. Okay, I want to add some points here. Oops. Just so that my lines look better. Okay, now this isn't going to be the end of what we do because you're going to see why in a second. But let's go ahead and play that and see if this idea works. Okay, so it's going to open, and it's going to wait a second and close. And then it's going to open and close, and open and close. Okay, so what happens is we hit the box, we come in here, we open the door, we finish, we delay, we come back, we reverse from end. Okay, then when we finish, we delay, and then we reverse from end, and we finish, we delay. So we're stuck in this loop now, okay, which isn't what we want. What we really need is a variable that says that the door is either open or closed. Okay, so we're going to add a variable, and I'm going to call this door open. Now this doesn't have to be visible, this is just for our use here. Okay, so number one, I'm going to check is my door already open? So we're going to use a branch. Okay. Because if my door's already open, I don't want to swing the door open, right? So if the door open is false, then go ahead and play. Okay. If the door's closed, basically play. If that makes sense. Sometimes it gets a little weird when working with this true and false stuff. And I'll probably mess that up here at some point, but that's kind of part of the process. So, all right. So now when we're finished, okay, we're going to delay, and then we're going to say we're going to use this branch again, because if my door is open, then I want to close it. Okay. So now if my door is open, I want to close it. Otherwise, I'm not going to do anything at all. Okay. Right now, we will add to this. So let's compile. Let's play this. Door opens. It should close and stay closed. Okay, so it didn't, because we never told it after we were done that the door was open. Okay, we said it was the door open, right? It wasn't. So we went in, we go over here, and just because we ask that the door is open, we didn't ever actually say that the door is ever open. Okay, so if the door is open, this will be when it comes through here, and is false, right? Then the first thing we have to do is set door open. Right? Does that make sense? Or we're going to set the door closed. Okay, if the door was open, so I probably got these backwards. Like I said, it gets a little confusing sometimes. I'm going to unwire this real quick. Okay, so after this gets done, if the door was open, then we're going to set so we're going to set the opposite of what we had. Okay, so this is going to flip, and I think there might be a flip. Flip-flop. Yeah, so you could probably use this too. Okay. So if we finish through the animation and we'll have a little delay, which actually probably moved it after anyway, and the door was open, then we set the door to the opposite. So we probably don't even need the branch. We probably don't need the branch, but we do need the branch because when the door is open, we want to close it. Okay. And if the door was closing, we just turn it back open again. All right, so let's see if this works. Okay, so it opened and it closed. It should open and close again. Okay, now I know there's a problem that I've seen when I was testing this before, in that if I run over this while it's closing, well, it was getting weird on me before. Okay, so that looks like it works pretty good. So that's open and close from the one side. Okay, so let's just go over this real quick. First we check that the door is open. If it's not open, then we play this animation. Okay, and in this animation, the first time we come through, remember, door is open, we're going to update, which is going to make this -90. When this is done updating, it's going to go through here, it's going to pause for a second, and it's basically going to say, okay, was that door open or closed? If it was open, then we're going to set that to false, so now the door is closed. And if it wasn't open, then we're going to set it to false, and we're going to close the door. So, like I said, it gets really confusing thinking about this. And you can call this variable whatever you want that makes sense to you. So you could say, door closed, and then run off true. And then over here, you'd flip these around, set the door to close, set the door to open. So it doesn't really matter as long as you work it in the right way. All right, so the other request was that it opens from both sides. Okay, so obviously with only a box on one side, it's not going to trigger from the other side. So let's go ahead and duplicate this box. Okay, you can call this box 2. Turn around, call this box 1. Doesn't really matter. And let's move this about the same distance on the other side. We're going to right click on this. We're going to add event on component begin overlap. Okay, now a lot of this stuff is the same. Okay, so we need all of this to open the door from the other side. So I'm going to copy this, come down here, paste it. Okay, we're doing the same thing. It's just now our timeline. Instead of -90, we just want 90. Okay, we're going to frame this. Now you can see here this got a little messed up. So we're going to hit this guy, say auto, and we're going to drag this down a little bit. Okay, so now we've got the same exact situation. We can hit the box from the other side. Is the door open? No. Go in and play this timeline. After it's done, wait for a second. If the door is, whatever the door is, flip that switch, and if it ends up being open, then turn around and close it, which will come through here, and say, okay, is the door open? No. Set it that way, and then just die. All right, so let's test it. So open, close, stays closed. Let's open, run through. So you can see, right, because I triggered the other system, that got a little weird, right? So now this just popped open and slowly closed, which is kind of weird. Because now my door, it didn't know whether it was open or closed. So because I triggered the other trigger and it fired the other event, right? See, now it's kind of like trying to do it all, okay? So, and that's the problem I was talking about earlier. So what we need is a way to say, should these even fire? Like, are they in the middle of doing their thing? If they're in the middle of doing their thing, then don't fire the other box. Then don't fire the other collision. All right? And so for that, I just create a variable called disable trigger. Okay? And we're going to go in here, and we're going to get it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to check to see if we even need to do anything at all. So we're in a branch. We're going to run into that branch. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. So have I disabled the trigger? Is the trigger disabled? So we can even change that. Trigger disabled. Okay, this makes sense. Trigger's disabled. then don't do anything at all. Okay? Don't do anything. If the trigger's not disabled, then go ahead and run our stuff. Okay, we can move this a little bit closer. Now, actually, no, we can't. If the trigger is not disabled, okay, the first thing we're going to do is disable the trigger. Okay, so set trigger disabled to true. Okay, so that way it's not going to look for it anymore. After this, I'm in my, actually we could probably go, let's go ahead and put this, because I'm not going to do it if the door isn't open either. So let's go from false. Okay, now there is a way you could do like a Boolean and. So I could say this and that, but the way this is working for me with this false stuff is a little confusing. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it simple. Okay, so if the trigger isn't disabled and the door isn't open, first thing we're going to do is disable the trigger and then run our stuff. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and copy this up to here, run through here, make some room. This guy is over here. Now this, this one up here, disable on trigger. Oops, wrong one. This one, not that one. And I'm hitting Alt, and I'm clicking on that to disconnect that wire. Okay, so now I'm getting a little sloppy, but I'm running out of time here. So trigger's disabled, false. Door's open, false. Disable my trigger, run my animation. Now the only thing I have to do is when I'm done closing the door again, and I'm setting my door back to closed. Okay, that's kind of weird, but door open, false is meaning the door is closed. I also need to reset that trigger. So trigger disabled to false. Okay. Now there's also probably a way that you could pipe this all into the same function and just pass it a negative number or times this by negative or something. Again, I'm just trying to keep it simple. That'd be something you refactor later on. Okay. So now we've got, you run over to box. Is the trigger disabled? No. Is the door open? No. Disable my trigger. Run my timeline, which opens my door. When that finishes, it holds on for a second. It flips whatever the door was, open or closed. If the door was open, then it sets it to open, and then it runs the door closed, right? Because it runs the reverse from end. Then after it comes through here, that door would be open, sets it back to closed, enables my trigger again. Okay, so now let's compile and let's test. It should open and close. It should stay closed. It should open, and then if I go through, it shouldn't get all weird. And it should open from the side. And it doesn't open. I can run on these triggers as much as I want, and it's not going to do anything until it's closed again. All right, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. All right, and that is it for this video. It's a quick little door opening and closing system. And if you like these videos, let me know. Say something in the comments, or like and subscribe to my channel. I'm kind of doing a mixture of some Unreal Engine stuff and then a whole bunch of woodworking stuff. Playing with lasers lately, and so I have, as my channel is called, the hoarder of hobbies because I get into so many different things, with game development being one of them. So if you like these kinds of videos, like I said, thumbs up, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It'll really help me out. And that's it for this one. Thanks for watching.